Happy Friday and welcome to Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. I'm Maria Marino, and coming up on the show, Sean Kerner will be fresh from the lab giving us some props. Plus, Sean Zerillo has Preakness picks, but we start in the NBA. Game 6 tonight between the Knicks and Pacers, and the road struggle is real for the Pacers, who are 1-5 straight up this postseason away from home. But a different story inside Gainsbridge Fieldhouse, where they're 5-0. They're scoring 16 more points per game and holding opponents to 12.5 fewer points per game on average at home. So here to talk NBA with me, Chris Raybon and Sean Little. So Pacers are favored. They're looking to stave off elimination. Raybon, how are you expecting this game to go?
You know, we've had a couple blowouts, Maria, over these last few games. I think this one gets back to being a lot closer. So I'm rolling with the Knicks here and taking the points, because when I look at this series, you know, both teams kind of had that letdown game where they come back the next game and put up more effort. But the deeper you get into the series, the team I worry about having a letdown more is the Indiana Pacers. You know, they're a little bit less experienced than the Knicks, who have, you know, been going to the playoffs these, you know, for most of the last couple of years with Tom Thibodeau. So game 6, if you look at the trends, well, first of all, let's talk about, you know, because Anunoby, you know, he's going to be out again, but this 5-man lineup with Brunson, and when you put McBride in the starting lineup instead of Precious Achiuwa, Brunson, McBride, DiVincenzo, Hart, and Hartenstein, that lineup was a plus 104 during the regular season in net rating, a plus 5 in game 5, despite some poor 3-point shooting. So this is another one of these lineups that just works for the Knicks, and you know Tibbs is going to play these guys a ton of minutes. But trend-wise, game 6 underdogs up 3-2. So kind of when a series like this, where it's been ping pong and usually the home team has the edge, game 6 dogs up 3-2 are 43 and 32, 57% against the spread over the last 2 decades. Game 6 teams on the road up 3-2, 37 and 25 against the spread, 60% covering by 3 points per game over the last 2 decades. And when that team won game 5 by more than 15, as did the Knicks, 10-5 against the spread is a dog in game 6. So this is a spot where I just worry about Pacers having to let down a little bit more. I like taking the points here. I think it's, you know, the market's kind of betting on this zigzag theory, but I think if it's going to break, it probably breaks in this game 6.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think it's clear the difference in experience between somebody like Tyrese Haliburton and somebody like Jalen Brunson. That being said, I am still a little hesitant to go money line. However, Sean is a little more bullish on the Knicks, and he's willing to go there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very bullish on the Knicks, and I understand the zigzag theory. And if you go back to that initial graphic you showed of the Pacers playing at home on the road, it's flat out because they're a front-running basketball team. When things are going good, they feel great. Tyrese Haliburton is chirping. When things get rough at all, they start to crumble and get extremely tight. If you go back to game 3 in Indianapolis, when the Knicks had an opportunity to go up 3-0, I thought it was a done deal. We know what happened with Nembhard. He hit a big-time three-pointer to win the game, essentially, after he got the grenade from Tyrese Haliburton. I worry when Tyrese Haliburton and things get extremely tight, he's not a guy that the Pacers can depend on. He has shown in multiple games this year offensively where he's just flat out disappeared, wants nothing to do with, I guess, the grind of every possession, offensive basketball that it takes to compete on a high level in the NBA. I'm worried that he's not going to show up. Also, I just saw this exact scenario with the New York Knicks, and I know OG Anunoby was on the floor, but I thought they were going to lose going to Philadelphia in that game 6, have to come back to the Garden and win in a game 7. I'm not making that same mistake. This is very similar to me. Biggest part of this handicap here and why I'm taking the Knicks on the money line. First of all, I think the price is too good to pass up at plus 180. I'd much rather I believe if they win this game, it's by almost 8 to 9 points, the Knicks, right? I don't think it's that tight of a game where the spread would even come into play. That's why I'm taking the plus 180. And also, they had 2 full days off here, the New York Knicks. It isn't a game, day off, game again. And that's where the Knicks unloaded the clip in that game 3 where they almost went up game 3. And then in game 4, they legitimately had 0 left, especially on the road. That game started poorly. They had no crowd to lean on to get back into the game, and it just got out of hand. They shelved the guys, got a little bit of rest, and then showed up at the Garden and smashed those guys. The New York Knicks, on 2 to 3 days rest throughout the entire season, are 12-5 straight up. I think that extra day of rest is the tipping point here. And also, we've seen it over and over again. Win the rebounding battle in this game, win the game. 5-0, when whatever team wins the glass has won the game straight up in this matchup. I think the Knicks are going to come out with the extra day rest, excited, rolling, have a lot more energy than they did when last time they were in Indianapolis, and I think they get the W. Plus 180 is too much for me to pass up here.
Raybon, I don't know about you, but I feel like that video of Sean should be like the pregame speech for the Knicks. That was very like compelling case. Do you have just a quick response just in regard to that money line and why you're maybe just a little hesitant?
Yeah, no, I mean, I lean the money line too, but this is a lot of points. You're talking about 6.5 points for a series where, the Knicks, I think, have outscored the Pacers by about a point per game. So I just love taking the points as well, because at the end of the day, it is still a team on the road, and Jalen Brunson's fine, but you're still talking about like Rick Bride, DiVincenzo, Hart, and Hartenstein playing, 40 minutes each. Like that, there's still a recipe for disaster on the road, or, you might not fully, get it done here. So like the points, still like the money line, but I feel more confident just taking those points. That's a lot of points for a team that has been in almost every game that they played this postseason, home or road, until pretty much the last one.
No doubt. And I think it's also a spot where you could split the unit up, right? Bet some on the money line, some on the number. If, put it like this, if the Knicks win lose a very close game, I'm gonna feel like I got greedy and should have just took the points. So there's a double-edged sword to this as well. So whatever you feel most comfortable with as a bettor is the way you should go. And hey, Raybon, go get your Alec Burks jersey on, put that on, and enjoy a little supplemental buckets off the bench as well.
I hope so.
Oh man. Okay. Fair enough on all counts. Looking ahead to the weekend, we got Thunder Mavericks game 6, Dallas in the driver's seat, and at home with a chance to close this out. Sean, what is your play?
I'll be a little shorter here. Mavs first half -1.5 in the market. That's what I like. In 4 road playoff games this year in the first half, the offensive rating is the lowest of the remaining teams in the playoffs. In this NBA postseason, the Oklahoma City Thunder are only 104.2 offensively in that to start games in that first couple frames. They haven't been very good. And when we're talking about coming into this series, Raybon and Maria, I was thinking the more balanced offensive team was going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. We know about SGA, scores 30 every night. Jalen Williams is going to supplement him. And then they were going to get a bunch of spot-up shooting like they've gotten all year from Keyshawn Wallace, from Isaiah Joe, and the rest of them. That just hasn't been the case. If we look at game 4, the only guy to shoot over 50% from the floor outside of SGA was Chet Holmgren. He was 6 for 9. Game 5, Giddey was 5 of 8 in 12 minutes. But Joe, Wallace, and Dort were 7 for 27 in game 5. That offensive balance hasn't been there for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then when you flip over to the Dallas Mavericks, it has been. PJ, Derrick Jones Jr. has been good. Derek Lively has been crushing his points prop. I think in a game back in Dallas, this is where we're going to finally see that Oklahoma City team be a little younger. Luka's coming off his best game of the playoffs in game 5. I think they get home Dallas on them early, often, and wrap up this series.
I really like the first half idea, especially in a series that's been pretty back and forth. And Raybon, you're going with a prop here rather than a side.
Yeah, Maria. And before I get to the prop, I'll just say the reason I haven't gone in on a side or settled on a side yet, I don't know if I'll be betting one at all, is because I think in game 5, we were getting points with Dallas. And we know OKC was hitting a ton of tough mid-rangers and things like that. But if you look at overall this series, Dallas has actually been having the worst shot quality. It's just Oklahoma City's missing a lot more shots. And, that kind of makes sense for a team that's a little less experienced. So it's like, I don't want to lay points with OKC because, we don't know if they have it. They're on the road. They should make more shots, but they're inexperienced and on the road. And then with Dallas, now you're laying points here. So That's why I don't like a side. The prop I'm going with is Cason Wallace, 7.5 points, rebounds, assists. I'm going with the over on that one. It looks like he's starting to become that fifth closer. They benched Josh Giddey. Isaiah Joe took his spot, but it was Wallace who closed the game, played the final 9 minutes and 52 seconds of the fourth with a +2. The only other fourth quarter pluses in that game were SGA and Luquens Dort. So I think that Wallace can get here. He's averaging 7.2, but in just over 20 minutes per game in this series. Now he played about 27 in game 5, and I think that's the most likely outcome is he gets above 24 in this game as well. So I think the numbers kind of support it. I think, and he missed some shots too in game 5, could have had more. So I think Wallace gets over this low hanging 7.5 points, rebounds, assist prop.
Very nice. Okay, one more series we got to talk about, and it's Denver, Minnesota. Now, Sean, we were on Action Island a day ago talking about how weird this series is. I just want to get a quick reaction from you on just, okay, we got game 7 because of course.
Of course is right. And by the way, if you watch that Action Island, we absolutely nailed the cap. We got a little bit unlucky there with Ant-Man having to go out just because it was a blowout, but he was way more aggressive, and that was the way that they were going to be able to beat the Denver Nuggets, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a play on this game because I'm completely a little turned around and twisted up. You would think, I think a big telling thing for me, Raybon, was now that we are having a game 7 and we're going back to Denver, we talk about how good that home court advantage is. I thought this number would be like -5.5, -6. The fact that it's -4, 4.5 in some spots makes me a little nervous. I thought it would be longer than it is for this situation, especially this big of a zigzag, I guess, spot you want to call it. But also the total is extremely light. It's like 197.5, 198. So maybe that's why the spread overall is shorter. I think this is the biggest question for me is Anthony Edwards ready to go on the road in a game 7 and be as aggressive as he was at home in game 6? Is he ready to put up 20 to 25 shots regardless of what defensive strategy is thrown at him? If he is ready for that mentally in that type of pressure spot, they have a chance to win. If not, it's going to be Jokic and the boys back in the Western Conference Finals.
I'm as exasperated as you are, Sean. Luckily, Raybon does have a pick for this game.
Yeah, I'm rolling. I got to roll with Denver money line here. And listen, I think it could be a tight game. I think the spread, not being out of hand is sharp. That's why I don't feel comfortable laying it. But I do think Denver's a side in this game. I mean, first of all, they are going back home, and there's been a lot of road wins in this series. But you look at what happened in Denver last game. They laid a complete egg shooting the basketball. They shot 30% from the field and 19% from 3. Now let's break it down. Let's look at their threes, because they shot 7 of 36 from 3. They shot 4 of 22 on wide open threes. That's 18%. They shot 2 of 9 on threes considered open. So that's 22%. They were just terrible across the board on shots that they typically make. And then on the other side, Minnesota game 6, on tightly contested shots overall, 2s and 3s, 70% from the field, 19 of 27. Now, for the series, they're down at 54%. Regular season, 53%. Regular season on the road, 52%. So Minnesota played over their heads in game 6. Denver laid a complete egg. Denver's the defending champs. I can't see Denver losing 3 of 4 in a series at home. As a defending champs, a team that has one of the best home court advantages, if not the best in the league. They had an 8.5 plus 8.5 margin of victory at home this year. It's over 8 points better than they were on the road. They're top 3 in record after a loss, margin of victory after a loss this season. Top 5 since Malone has taken over almost a decade ago. They're 6-2 straight up after a loss over these last 2 postseasons. And game 7 teams at home on the money line, if they don't have experience, they didn't make the playoffs last year, those teams are only 6-8. So those are the teams that are vulnerable. But when you have a team that made the playoffs in the prior season, has more experience, game 7 at home, 31-12, 72% over the past 2 decades. And if you're looking at the spread, which I still get a little nervous about, but NBA playoff favorites off a double-digit loss, that made the prior postseason. 76, 44, and 1, 63% against the spread over the last 2 decades, covered by nearly 3 points a game. I think Denver gets it done. I don't think Minnesota played as well as that final score looked. And now now it's a bounce back spot for Denver. I just don't see this team as good as they've been at home, losing 3 out of 4 at home to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Both teams are going to be tight, coming out. That's why the total's so low. But give me the team at home that's been there, done that before.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Really quick, Maria. That's dead on 100%. And we're talking about the glass. It was one and done for Denver. 62-43. Minnesota won the rebounding battle. Tight at home. Give me Jokic and the more experienced squad as well.
Look at that. You convinced him. Hey, you're not going to get any argument from me. Sean had said he had the biggest question being like, can Ant Edwards close this out? And the flip side of that is Jokic going to be, the ethereal like MVP that we saw earlier in this series? And I think there's a very good chance of that happening. All right, I've held you guys hostage long enough. So Sean Little, Chris Raybon, thanks for joining GDD.
Always a pleasure.
Games will be starting the next inning while we're talking about it. It'll be fun.
And the defense, he hit it there too. The defense could be pretty good, not against the run, but maybe a little bit better.
As promised, our director of predictive analytics, Sean Kerner, is joining us now. Busy day. We got baseball, we got WNBA. But let's start here. Earlier today, you gave out a couple plays for the most strikeouts market on FanDuel, one of those being Paul Skeens, and he struck out his first 7 batters today. So how are you feeling?
Pretty good, especially since we got that at 17-1. I had to do a triple take on why they were offering him so high because he just has so much upside. So had to take that. Right now, I feel pretty good. Honestly, yeah. I would say it's about 50-50. He's going to take down the entire market. The non-Paul Skeens pitcher today, I had the over-runner at most strikeouts around 10.5, and he's on pace to clear that. So I think if you get to 11 or 12, I'll feel really good about this. I also have the other play in this market was Kyle Harrison. I took him at 15-1. I love his upside tonight. Against the Rockies at sea level, they strike out at a much higher rate on the road. So if you want to get in on that, unfortunately the market's down, but you can take his over 5.5 strikeouts. I do think there's value there. So if you want to join in on that, go with his over 5.5 strikeouts.
Very nice. Okay. I guess it makes sense. You're feeling good. We got bottom of the 4th here. Pirates leading the Cubs 5-0 at the moment. Let's go Skeens. And you do have an official play just for today's show. So where are you looking?
Yeah, so I have a strikeout prop for the Yankees-White Sox game. I'm going with Nestor Cortez of the Yankees to go under 6.5 strikeouts. It's -144 FanDuel. I've been watching this prop all morning. It opened -110. It's been slowly dropping. It's down to 5.5 at some books. FanDuel still has it at 6.5. Love it at -144. Projecting it closer to -200. He's facing the White Sox today, and obviously the White Sox are a very bad team. I think their 14-30 record speaks for itself. However, when it comes to striking out, they're kind of league average. Even in many of the underlying metrics for strikeouts I like to look at. So they're not a team that's necessarily some plus matchup in terms of Ks. I think Cortez will just pitch a really good quality start, but hopefully not strike out 7+ batters. The White Sox might also send around 7 right-handed hitters to the plate against the southpaw, so that's just going to ding his expected K rate a little bit. I have him run a coin flip at 5.5. So again, if you see a book offering under 5.5 at plus money, I am showing some value there. I think there's just a ton of value getting that extra strikeout with under 6.5 at -144. Like I said, I'm projecting this closer to -200. He stays under 6.5.
So we have an under for Cortez, the official play, a little bit of a 2-for-1 there, leaning over for Harrison. Okay, let's move to the WNBA as well. Whew, it's been a couple of days since the season started. So much to be excited about. 2 games on the slate tonight. Mystics are road dogs visiting the Sun. So what is your play in that game, which tips off the evening?
Yeah, so I'm going with Brittany Sykes of the Mystics to go under 5.5 rebounds at -102. She led the Mystics with 10 rebounds in the opener against the Liberty. She's a high effort player. I mean, she's going to try to be around the ball wherever it is. So she's going to collect boards here or there, but for her, she's a guard, so she does need some luck to get 6 or more boards. And if you look at 6 of her 10 rebounds against Liberty were on missed threes. So this is just going to be a tougher matchup for her because the Sun, they play at a slow pace, and they shoot a lot of high percentage shots inside, so fewer threes than like the Liberty would. So that's going to hurt her a bit. Plus, they like to get to the free throw line at a pretty high rate, which will hurt her rebound upside as well. So this is just a tougher matchup for her. I'm still projecting her right at 5 boards. This is going to be a close one. Like I said, she's going to be in there trying to get boards whenever possible,
Yeah.
but I am projecting her around a -140 fair price to stay under 5.5 here. Plus, there's a chance they get blown out and the starters get pulled early. There's that kind of out as well. But I do like the under here.
Yeah, it's a really interesting look considering, as you said, she did have the 10 boards the other night, but it was kind of deceiving with the style of play that the Liberty have versus, what you're going to see against Connecticut. By the way, total side note, just heard another strikeout for Skeens, so keep them coming.
Loving it.
But all right, so in the nightcap for WNBA, Storm, short favorites on the road in Minnesota. What do you like in that one?
Yeah, so I actually like the under for this game because it's all the way up to 167 now. I believe it opened around 164, which is what the total was for the first game. The first game, they faced each other opening night a couple nights ago. The total was 164.5. The under cashed easily with 153 total points. However, it was the fastest paced game of the season so far. So typically I'd be sitting here telling you, I actually want to go on the over because there should be more scoring here. The Seattle Storm really struggled from the floor shooting, but that's kind of what I expected because they are, a different team. They have 2 more scorers now with NECA and Skylar Diggins-Smith, along with Jewel Lloyd. So I thought it might take them a couple games to gel. So I don't think they're necessarily going to go off here, but based on my expected score model, I still have that opening game closer to 162 total points. So I think just moving the total up to 167 might be a bit of an overreaction. I'm still projecting this right around that 164. So I'm going to just kind of fade the line move a bit here and go with the under 167.
Yeah, you mentioned the rematch from opening night. So the Lynx beat the Storm 83-70. And, I agree that you could see this go a different way, but the score still kind of staying around that similar spot. So very nice look there as well. Sean Kerner, we appreciate you taking the time with so much going on today.
Thanks for having me and go Skeens. Let's get to 9. He's at 9. Let's get to 12. Sweat free.
He's going as we speak, but I'll let you go enjoy the game. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
and on the unders as well. I think it's, again, very much the look, especially in a Bruins elimination game, even more than some of the other teams. I think it's a good play here. I like the under 1.5 in the first period to -130. And I like the game total to go under 5.5. I feel like we'll see just a really defensive, sharp game here. I kind of feel like we are going to see the Panthers find a way to get it done. I wouldn't hate. You could also target the Bruins to go under their team totals, and I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. But I think this is going to kind of follow a lot of the elimination game trends and entering the game 6 and game 7 trends, entering tonight's play before that ridiculous Rangers Hurricanes game, which I think was a lot. I mean, Freddie Anderson was horrific, and that kind of threw the game on its head. But I do feel, so the elimination games were averaging just under 3 goals. Not per team, 3 combined goals in the 6 and 7s. And I feel like that is kind of a trend worth following, especially with the Bruins. They were one of the teams that was really brought that number down. And I think that everything we know about them revolves around defense and goaltending. So I feel like in this spot, getting a 5.5 and getting a reasonable first period under total is a good bet. So that's what I like here.
This Saturday, it's the 149th Preakness Stakes at Pimlico Racecourse, and these are the post positions, along with odds to win the second leg of the Triple Crown. Kentucky Derby winner Mystic Dan is the favorite at 5-2 odds, followed by Catching Freedom and Imagination at 6-1 odds, and then Tuscan Gold at 8-1. Joining us to break down the Preakness is Sean Zerillo. Firstly, one horse not mentioned on that list was Muth. For betting purposes, what are the effects of him being scratched?
Yeah, Muth was the 8-5 morning line favorite, and even before the Derby had been run, he was the favorite in the futures market for the Preakness Stakes, and interested to see how Fierceness would have been lined relative to him had they ended up facing off in this race. Fierceness owns a win over Muth from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, and ultimately, I was planning to go against Muth. Mike Conti was planning to go against Muth, and that's how we were going to find value in terms of betting this race. And with Muth scratching out, now Mystic Dan, the Kentucky Derby winner, not only is going to be the Preakness favorite, but he's going to be much shorter than that 5-2 morning line. He may be even money. He may even be 4-5 by post time, considering the fact that it's going to be raining on Saturday. He's run his best races in the rain, and he also owns the top 2 speed scores in this field, in addition to being the Kentucky Derby winner. So Mystic Dan's odds are only going to shorten, and as a result, it just means that you're probably going to have to go against them if you plan to find value betting on this race. It also impacts the pace scenario pretty drastically as well. There was not much pace in this field. The Bob Baffert horse, which included Muth, and which also includes the number 9 Imagination, were expected to be the pace setters. Now Imagination doesn't really have anybody else pressing him. The 2 Dwayne Lucas horses, the number 6 Just Steel and the number 7 Seize the Gray. I may have those numbers backwards. I believe Seize the Gray is 6 and 7 is Just Steel, but those are likely going to be the 2 horses pressing the pace and pressing the number 9 Imagination at this point, considering Muth is no longer in the field. And I don't really see either of those two horses as particularly big speed threats. So Imagination may get a nice clean trip around Pimlico here and could potentially go to wire on this field. And I think he is the likeliest horse to run in the money. We'll talk about him a little bit more in just one second. But in terms of the horses that are going to be coming from the back of the pack, the number 3 Catching Freedom, the number 1 Mugatu, and the number 2 Uncle Heavy, it just makes them run up against a little bit more here, considering the fact that they're not going to get pace to run into. So they're going to have to close in to what will likely be a moderate to slow pace. And that is all going to work against them. So going to like a number 9 Imagination's chances just by nature of the fact that his stablemate scratched out, and he should have an easier trip around Pimlico here.
So it sounds like Imagination is a contender. Who else can actually win this race?
Yeah, Imagination, just by the fact that he's the lone speed in this field. He's also never finished out of the exacta in 6 lifetime starts. So going to be hard to beat him, but I do think he was the likeliest horse to run in the money as well, in addition to being a top win contender. Mystic Dan, obviously the Derby winner. As I said, also the 2 best Beyer speed scores in this field. He's the only horse who's run above 100 in his career, and the average speed score for the Preakness winner is about 101. He's the only one who's run above 100, as I said. So all of the other horses would need to improve relative to what they've done previously, and Mystic Dan would need to regress in order for that to flip. His best win also came over a muddy track, and as I also mentioned, it should be raining all day on Saturday at Pimlico Racecourse. Derby winners also in the money about 76% of the time when they do run in the Preakness. So Mystic Dan very likely to finish in the money. Imagination very likely to finish in the money. A horse who's not as likely to finish in the money, but I do think has a big chance of winning this race, is the number 8 Tuscan Gold, and he will be my top selection in here, considering the odds that I think you're going to get. Taking the same path to the Preakness that Chad Brown, his trainer, took with both cloud computing and early voting a couple of years ago. Both of those horses came in to Pimlico on their 4th lifetime start. Previous career best Beyer speed score in the mid-90s. Tuscan Gold has a 95. All of them placed or showed, finished 2nd or 3rd in a Derby prep race, pointed away from the Derby towards the Preakness, and this is the target race that Chad Brown had circled. And I really liked his effort in the Louisiana Derby. He finished 3rd there, but he was really the only horse who was up near a fast pace and ended up finishing well. That is another point in Mystic Dan's favor as well. In the Kentucky Derby, at the second call, he was in 6th, and all the other horses around him at that point ended up finishing in the back of the pack. He was really the only one who stayed up and continued running well. So I expect Mystic Dan, the 5, to run well. I expect the number 9 Imagination to finish in the money, considering he's going to have a good pace, and he always does. And the number 8 Tuscan Gold, I think, has the best shot given his odds relative to how I think he's going to run. So those are my 3 main win contenders for this race. I think Catching Freedom, as I mentioned, and given the pace scenario, is just up against it here in terms of actually winning. Could absolutely hit the board. Super classy horse, but not going to bet him to win.
Well, finally, Sean, as it relates to Preakness, let's get real specific here. How do you plan on betting in terms of exotics?
In terms of the exacta, I'm going to try to beat Mystic Dan just in terms of how I'm trying to find value here. So I'm going to play the number 8 Tuscan Gold and the number 9 Imagination. You could either exacta box them, or you could play a weighted exacta depending on which horses you prefer. I'm going to play a little bit more on the 8-9 exacta than I will on the 9-8 exacta, just because I think there's more value if Tuscan Gold ends up finishing in first. But I do expect Imagination to run on the money, as I said. And then in the trifecta, I also plan to get Mystic Dan in there, plan to get Imagination in there, and I plan to get my other top win contender, Tuscan Gold, in there. Now, you could pair those 3 on a line. You could pair those 3 on separate lines and try to get 2 of the 3 of them in the money. You could also just trifecta box the 3 of them and try to get all 3 in there. What I'm going to do is take those 3, put them on 2 separate lines, and try to get 2 of the 3 of them in the money. And then also add in the number 2 Uncle Heavy and the number 9 Catching Freedom on that 3rd line and try to get one of those 5 horses in 3rd place. So hopefully 2 of those horses run of the money. We get either the 3rd of them in as well, or one of the other 2 horses I mentioned, and end up cashing those tickets. But essentially trying to beat Mystic Dan in the exacta, and then trying to get 2 of the 3 of Mystic Dan, Imagination, and Tuscan Gold in the trifecta.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you for that breakdown. Now, before we go, you have a baseball pick for us as well. So switching gears here a little bit, you like the Rangers as they open their series against the Angels.
Yeah, they have big advantages in this series, both in terms of defense, but also base running value. The Angels, a bottom 5 team per defensive run saved, per base running value this season. The Rangers closer to league average in base running value, and they're a top 5 defensive team. Those are things that I see in my model that are based on preseason data, but then you look at the actual in-season results and it aligns with what you would expect. So big differences in terms of stuff that you don't normally think about, not offensive related, not defensive or not pitching related, but defensive and base running value. Massive advantages for Texas in the series. I think that is a huge underlying edge. But then on top of that, Tyler Anderson just pitching way over his head in 2024. His strikeout minus walk rate has been about 8.5% the past 2 years, league average closer to 14%. There's a huge difference in his ERA. He had a 5.43 ERA last season, 2.92 this year. His pitch mix is the same. His velocity is the same. As I said, the results, the strikeout minus walk rate, basically the same. And his expected ERA has been in the high 4s over both seasons. The big difference is luck. Batting average on balls in play and strand rate. He has a 230 batting average on balls in play, career average closer to 290, MLB average closer to 290. And that is a stat which always regresses either towards a player's average or towards the MLB average. And same thing with strand rate, typically around 72% throughout his career, closer to 80% this year. Again, another data point that typically always regresses either towards a player's average or towards the major league average. There's players like Justin Verlander who are able to pitch above that major league average strand rate. You know, great players over underperform in these quote unquote luck categories. But that said, there is a regression coming for Anderson at some point, especially when you consider all of the data points from last season align, except for those 2 main luck categories. So the Rangers up to about minus 175 for me over the full game, minus 195 for the first 5 innings, and laying some juice on a favorite tonight. But I like the way they're trending at this point.
Rangers had lost 5 straight before winning their last game against Cleveland. Sean, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, like the ones you just heard from Sean, you can easily reference by following green.daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's all for Green.Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the weekend, and GDD will be back Monday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel.